Montreal's top preferences for draft picks has just been revealed from Marc-Olivier Beaudoin on Twitter, and there's a surprising defenseman's name right up there with their top choices. We're going to get into that. Plus, on the Athletic NHL show, they spoke about how the difference in offensive production between Demidov and some of the top defensemen is actually not as different as maybe we thought. There's a ton of crazy stuff, and a note on JF Houle leaving the Laval Rocket, all coming up on this episode of Habs Digest. And before we get into the video, Jesse, I want to remind people to hit subscribe to the channel. I'm just asking for that now. If we can even get 15, 20 you hitting that button, if you haven't hit it already, daily Habs news. We're going to be live for the draft. We have updates every single day, and if you want to stay up to date on the Habs, this is the spot to be. We got to start with JF Houle today, Jesse. This came absolutely out of nowhere. I was almost in shock when I read this, right? I'm looking at Twitter, and it's like, he just signed an extension. JF Houle just signed an extension, a few weeks ago, and now he's gone from the Laval Rocket. And I'll show you the picture here. The Rocket and JF Houle have agreed to part ways to allow Houle to pursue a professional opportunity with Clarkson University. And Anthony Marcotte on Twitter, Jesse, shed a bit more light on the whole situation, basically saying Clarkson University called the Habs to inquire about JF Houle's availability to coach their program. Permission was granted. The Habs could have said no, but the team realized that coaching at his alma mater, of course that's where JF Houle, that's where he went to school at Clarkson, could be an impossible opportunity for Houle to turn down, and that's exactly what happened. The Habs let him go. Jesse, the salaries in the NCAA can be better than the AHL. I know it's not what we expected. Having a coach that we thought would be good for the coming years is now just gone. But hey, I'm happy for him. But what are your thoughts on this whole kind of chaos situation going on in Laval right now?
I'm sad to see him go, and it's very unexpected news all the same, right? Just signing that extension just not so long ago. But at the same time, I get it, right? We know Kent Hughes and company are very happy with Martin St. Louis on that Montreal Canadiens bench. It's hard to kind of, foresee JF Houle getting there, even in assistance role, like kind of in the near future, right? So he had a chance to go to his alma mater. Really classy move by Kent Hughes again, by letting that happen, but again, it's tough to see him go. I liked the way that he was really preparing our players for the NHL level. Like, I feel like they were coming, Joshua Waugh, countless other examples of where he felt like he did a really good job with them. Some players like Arber, Xhekaj, Justin Barron, going down and getting good coaching that really helped their game. So this is a tough blow for the system. It's going to be interesting to see who we're bringing in to really help in this case, right? But at the same time, you really just got to wish all the best. He had a pretty respectable record at the same time, though, right? He was looking at, 105 and 86 record, 25 ties. Got to the Calder in 2021.
With a super young team as well,
Right. In his first year with the team on top of it, right? So, we wish him nothing but the best, though, as he goes on here.
Yeah, for sure. And I know that big thing you said, like, who's going to come in and fill that role? Some people speculating Pascal Vincent from the Columbus Blue Jackets, just adding to this Don Waddell, Columbus Blue Jackets now, Montreal Canadiens stuff going on. Who knows what's going to happen? There's a lot of theories. But yeah, wish the best to JF Houle. Hope he succeeds at Clarkson. We're just going to have to wait and see who Montreal decides to hire. Time to get into some of the other stuff, though, Jesse. And I want to start with this. Some very interesting information coming from The Athletic. Now, they did a podcast today going over their mock draft. Now, to be fair, I want to point out that this was done before this whole Gold Star event where a lot of teams were able to meet and talk with Ivan Demidov and see him in person, see his new measurements come in, all this stuff. But they kind of spoke about, which teams would pick where, and they were talking a lot about the Montreal Canadiens, and their pick is still Ivan Demidov at number 5. I just want to show you, this is where you can go find on Spotify. That's the title for the podcast. But they were talking about Montreal at 5, Jesse, and some of the stuff with Demidov, and I just wanted to highlight some of the stuff they had to say. He said, Montreal, the fans want skill, skill, skill. I can see a world where Porier or Buium have more offense at the NHL level than Demidov does. Not only that, he said, I believe that Porier and Buium each have 70-plus point upside. I think if Demidov hits, he's a leads your team in scoring winger, an 80 to 90 point guy. Peak point production may end up being close if Porier and Buium are as good as I think they can be. Now, Jesse, we're going to talk a bit more about Buium specifically in the coming section of the video, but I want to focus more on Demidov here. This is, like, I feel like in my head, I have Demidov as a far better player than that. Now, an 80, 90 point guy is, like, absolutely amazing. Again, right? That's near the top of the NHL. That's extremely good. Maybe just I'm a bit jaded now with so many NHL players getting 82 points, point per game guys. There's like 30 of them, right? So it's like, is it that special? It still is. It's a first-line winger. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think that could be accurate? I mean, I believe it was Corey Proman that said it. I could be wrong, but like, I don't know. I feel like now all of a sudden it's like, no, we're putting Demidov down a little bit. Look at these defensemen who could be your offensive superstars instead.
Yeah, I don't want to throw shade, but it seems like the Athletic doesn't seem to want to give us nice things, right? They say, okay, you can get Demidov, but he's not going to be that good, right? Like for me, he looks like an electric type of player. Like he's for me more of like a 90, 100 point type guy, and probably in a couple of years where he's getting over that 100 points, right? Like for me, there's many scouts in this draft that feel that he has a better offensive upside in his prime than Macklin Celebrini. If I feel like Macklin Celebrini is getting around, maybe 90, or 80 to 90, I have to feel like Demidov is more than that. That's just kind of my rationale with it here. But at the same, I love the idea of him landing to us at fifth.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously extremely good. He's extremely talented, and he's a first-line winger type guy. But, like, I feel like teams are starting to get a bit more concerned, maybe whether it's his skating or whether it's whatever, his injury, probably not. And it's not so much his status from Russia now. It's more so just like, will he kind of turn that corner in the NHL and hit, as they want to say? Because, Jesse, I can see a world where, like, you might be afraid he just busts if his skating, not busts, but like doesn't, like maybe more of a 40-50 point guy. There's a lot of Russian players that have done that, and I don't mean to lump Demidov in with them because it's not a Russian thing, it's just a player thing, right? Look, I know his skill is amazing. I feel like it could be his skating holding him back and just his ability to make these moves at the NHL level, but I don't know. Just before we move on to the final thing, do you feel these concerns are starting to get overblown? Because I feel like this might just be some smoke being thrown before the draft. Maybe I'm too cynical, but I feel like he's better than some people are giving him credit for.
Yeah, and there's a reason why a lot of odds makers now have him at the second overall. When they got to see him, they saw that increased size and everything else. And honestly, think skill-wise that's exactly where he should be. It's interesting to see their mock tab, which is a predictive one of what they think the GMs are going to do. It's interesting, like that Chicago pick is so key, right? But it's not necessarily because they pick Lechinov that will still get Demidov or Lindstrom. And that's kind of the scary part in all of this. But I mean, just adds to the drama. And we'll just have to see how it unfolds.
It's going to be exciting. And speaking of drama, oh my, this was an interesting tweet today from Marc-Olivier Baudouin. Now, if you guys remember, I believe it was Baudouin himself who broke or was kind of the first on the Kent Hughes signing, I'm pretty sure. And regardless, he was on the Beck and Seneca stuff before a lot of other people, notably from Montreal. So he definitely has some inside sources. And according to him, well, his recent source says this. He said, after rediscussing with his source, who kind of knows what's going on, the one that spoke about Beck and Seneca and the Habs' interest in him before, he said, here's the order of the Habs candidates for number 5. Number 1, Ivan Demidov. Number 2, Cayden Lindstrom. Number 3, Zeev Buium and Beck and Seneca. Guhle is not even kind of on the list at this point. So it's very, very interesting, Jesse, that we're seeing Buium now shoot up because we heard so much about Seneca. Obviously, Lindstrom and Demidov seem to be the consensus top picks. But to see Buium, and after listening to that podcast today before I saw this tweet, it's like, if Buium could be like a 70-point guy and they see him, and I don't know, clearly their injury concern with Lindstrom is probably not there if this source is accurate. So we also want to say this source might not be accurate. We can just report on what we see here. If Demidov and Lindstrom are gone, or if for some reason they decide not to go with Lindstrom, can you see Buium be in that pick? A guy that does have that offensive potential, like they said on the Athletic Hockey Show. Like, look at Vancouver. Arguably their best offensive player is Quinn Hughes, and they're succeeding.
This list looks about right. I think the only other name that a lot of Montreal Canadiens fans like to see is probably Guhle. But other than that, I think they're right on the money, right? Like, there's a lot to like about Zeev Buium. What's interesting is he's getting comparisons right now, Zeev Buium, to Scott Niedermayer, which for me is like, that was my go-to player in Chell back in the day. Like, just a puck-moving, extremely mobile defender. Like, if you have the opportunity to draft a player like that could fill those shoes, that's a big ask.
Yeah.
But if he could, that is a tremendous player to add to your team, just in so many ways. Like, just could impact your defense in great ways, impact your offense, right? It's hard to find so many players that like have such a net effect like right away, like a Zeev Buium. So I absolutely get the appeal. I think it's totally warranted. I would just, I'd love to see us get that forward, right? But I know Kent's going to do right by us at this draft.
Yeah, for sure. But like they said on the show, is like forwards are more fun to pick because you can see them being this, a game-breaking forward. But defensemen can do it in certain ways too. And Buium is an elite puck mover. He's a guy that has definitely been climbing on my own list. Like, you asked me a month ago, I'm taking Zane Parekh as maybe my favorite defenseman in the draft. Now, after watching more tape, after educating myself a bit more, I gotta say Buium just looks like a guy, one of those guys that you just feel like can't miss at all. Like, you just watch him play and you're like, how could he even feasibly fail? Like, yeah, he might not get 60 points in the NHL, but There's no way he's going to end up being bad, but that's that. The final thing though, Jesse, before we end the video, Beck and Seneca, just briefly, they talked on the podcast as well about how much smoke there is about Beck and Seneca, how most teams are basically saying, from what they're hearing, he's going to be gone by 7, no doubt about it, whether it's Utah, Ottawa, or a team ahead of them, Ottawa 7, Utah 6. And now I think it was Pronman or someone else on it, maybe Scott Wheeler, I'm not sure, but they said that Seneca's almost certainly going to be gone by 6. So whether it's Utah or maybe Montreal, you're starting to hear a lot of smoke about him. And again, there's a world where Demidov and Lindstrom are both gone. And the Habs clearly are maybe looking at Seneca. They're on him early. He's maybe the odds of him going up there are increasing as well. There's a reason he's in these, you look at these FanDuel odds and he's all the way up there. I mean, I don't know. Would you take Seneca over Buium? That's maybe putting you on the spot for a question, but for me, I actually don't even think I would. I think I'd take Buium if it came down to those two, but do you have any thoughts on it?
Oh man, I would really want a forward.
Yeah.
I would really be tempted to pick, Seneca
Fair
at
enough.
5th. Just for what this team needs, we need offense so much. I feel like our decor already is probably even a lot of ways better just because there's so much depth there. There's going to be a couple guys that are going to pop off even more there. But right, like the Habs just love unicorn type players, which Seneca is, right? That size, that mobility, that vision for the game, right? Like we look, Arber Xhekaj kind of fits that mold, probably for different reasons. Still the same, definitely unicorn.
For sure.
Slav is a unicorn in his own way, right? Like similar to Seneca, like absolutely, I get the appeal in a lot of ways. This guy's a late riser, but it's just continuing even more. So it's just a question of like, how far is he going to climb? Like, how far is this going to go?
Yeah, it's hard to predict, right? Because his last 6 months were so phenomenal. And yeah, of course, there are criticisms that we've talked about all the time on the show. Like, oh, we can only play with certain line mates, whatever. But when you see that kind of growth, like that ability to just grow and get better so fast at such a young age, it's like, with your own development, you could do a lot of stuff for him. But yeah, this is kind of a crazy list here. Buium and Seneca, they're at number 3 with no T again on the conversation. Some people are going to be upset about that down below. I know that for a fact. So we'd love to hear all your thoughts on it right now, because that'll do it for this episode of Habs Digest. But if you enjoyed, like I asked you earlier, just hit subscribe. If you enjoyed the video and you haven't hit that button yet, we got daily Habs videos that I know you'll love. I'm Josh Gosse, my co-host Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.